Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the personal project at Nova. So, the personal project just went through a huge transformation. So we're going to start from scratch and go through. What is the personal project? The personal project is the culminating project in MYP5. It is the equivalent of the extended essay in the diploma program, and it's basically how the IB assesses students' ATL skills. It is a passion project, something a student feels passionately about. That could be something in terms of activism, climate activism, the arts, engineering. Most importantly, it is a celebration of learning in the MYP. All students in the MYP5 must complete a personal project. A good personal project has a clear, achievable, and challenging goal. It focuses on showcasing the ATL skills, the approaches to teaching and learning. It reflects the student's interests, hobbies, or concern about global issues, and it reflects our commitment as a school to academic honesty. It involves Research. It is a project that's not just a science fair project. This is a project that takes place over a year. It includes not just the product, but also the learning goal, the process of learning, a reflection on learning. So what happens with the personal project is students create a personal project proposal, and they go to a supervisor, and the supervisor can be any staff member in school, and they propose their project. If the project is approved, they create a process journal. And the process journal is basically just a diary of how they have completed the project. The first part is to create a learning goal. What do they want to know more about? What do they want to learn about? So, for example, it might be that they want to learn more about the Rohingya crisis. They're very interested in human rights. Could also be that they want to learn how brakes work on a car. It's up to them. The learning goal then needs to be tied to a product. There has to be something that's produced. That product doesn't necessarily mean a statue or painting. It could be an awareness campaign. It could be a report, a short story. They have to create something. Once they have created something, and they have their learning goal, they reflect on the process in a report. And that report is broken down into 3 separate areas that are assessed. It needs to include a bibliography of resources. So no project can be completed without some research. Some projects will have more research than others, but there will be some. There's also academic honesty form. Each meeting with a supervisor, and students have a minimum of 3 meetings per year, they must complete an academic honesty form. And the final part of the personal project is a community presentation. This is like a festival of learning, like a science fair, except for the projects are from the students' passion, and the whole community comes and sees the personal project. Students from kindergarten through 12th grade will go around and visit each product and learn about them. Parents, community members, alumni. This turns out to be a really fun event and a really great chance to present our students. Okay, great. So those are the elements of a personal project, but let's dig a little deeper and get into like the actual process some more. So the personal project has a personal project coordinator, and that is a staff member that oversees the entire process, because this is kind of a big culminating event. There are over 100 students in grade 10. It's 100 projects. So the personal project coordinator introduces the project to the community. They provide training for supervisors and students to support the completion of the project. The project itself is internally and externally moderated. So what that means is it is first assessed within the school by the personal project supervisor and one other staff member. Those two staff members need to agree on a grade based on the MYP personal project rubric. And it's like every other MYP product, meaning that the score is between 1 through 8. And there are grade boundaries set by the MYP. It's assessed on 3 different criteria. We'll talk about that a little later. Once we assess internally and give a grade, it's then sent to the IB for an external moderation. So people who don't know the student, who don't know the process, who can objectively say whether the grade we've given is correct. This is part of our authorization, or reauthorization process. So once we become an MYP school, these personal project grades are submitted each year to the IB. And then they match up whether our grades match the grades their examiners give. And so it's one of those external checks that make sure we are grading correctly. The personal project coordinator runs classes with the students in grade 10, walking them through the process. They also organize the community presentation. The personal project coordinator is also responsible for assigning staff members to students. The personal project supervisor is the mentor of the project. They have 3 meetings per year. The role of the personal project supervisor is not to give advice on the project. It is not to give students help on the project. As a matter of fact, you're quite limited as a supervisor in how you can support the student. Your main role is to ensure that students are academically honest. So this means going through and filling out at each of the 3 meetings an academic honesty form. Making sure the work is original to the student, that it's not plagiarized, that they are not receiving extra help from other sources. The other role of the personal project supervisor is to update and monitor the progress on ManageBack. So on the report card in the first semester, the student will either be flagged for on track or not on track for completion of the project in semester 1. In semester 2, the grade for the personal project, the internal moderated grade, will appear on the report card. Externally moderated grades for the personal project, those that are approved by the IB, are not released till August. So students will be awarded a conditional MYP certificate, assuming that they cannot receive an MYP certificate unless they pass the personal project. In August, if there's any significant difference in grade that would affect their certificate, students will be on a case-by-case basis evaluated. The personal project supervisor is also the connection to the personal project coordinator and to parents. So as a supervisor, if they have a student who is not on track to complete the project, it is their responsibility to reach out both to the parent and to the coordinator. And finally, the personal project supervisor is the first person to assess those students' work. And so it is assessed not just by one person, the personal project supervisor, but at least one other staff member. They assess it based on 3 different criteria: planning, applying, and reflecting. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to the NOVA IB Handbook website, where we have a personal project handbook. So the first criteria is planning, and the planning process involves setting a learning goal, setting a goal for the product, identifying which ATL skills will help them to achieve the goal, setting success criteria. How will I know my project is successful? And creating an action plan. In the applying skills section, this is where students talk about how they use those ATL skills, how they got the project done on time, what they learned. And then the last part, reflecting. Reflecting is broken down into the impact of the project. So the impact of the project on the community and the impact of the project on their personal learning. They also then, in the reflecting section, reflect on the success of the project. Did they meet their assessment criteria, their criteria for success? Or did they not? Did they fail? It is okay for students to fail. Their projects can be failures. That's not the criteria for getting an 8 on the personal project is having a successful project. Having a successful reflection, being able to tie their failure or their success back to their ATL skills, that's what's most important. So as personal project coordinator, that will be something that students do on a weekly basis, reflect on their process. So the focus of this entire project is on the ATL skills. Because this is basically the big ATL assessment for the external assessment for the MYP. Unlike the e-assessments for each of the subject groups, there is no external assessment for ATL skills other than the personal project. So the students really have to keep tying it back to how did the ATL skills help in the project completion? What was the personal impact? What was the global impact? And by global, that doesn't necessarily mean the globe. It means the overall impact. And again, reflection on how they did as a student, what they learned, how this will affect their learning in the long term. All students have to receive a passing grade of 3 or higher to receive the MYP certificate. Now, we are not eligible to submit our products or to give MYP certificates until we are fully authorized. This is our external moderation. Until we are authorized, we can only do internal moderation. The community presentation is a big celebration of learning within our community, and it's mandatory by the MYP. Because it is an externally moderated piece of work, there are no redos. Students don't get to see their score and decide they want to improve it. There are no extensions for late submissions because we are held to an outside deadline. So this is going to be challenging for many of our students who have often gotten redos. And that's part of the reason in the lower MYP grades, we're really reinforcing to students a summative assessment is an end assessment. Because if they get into the habit of thinking they can always do it over, when it comes to something like the MYP project, they're going to have a really hard time because if they don't pass the project, all 5 years of their work results in them not getting a certificate. And it's a sad thing. However, it's also a very valuable life lesson. So again, there are lots of fail-safes along the way, report cards, progress reports, a personal project coordinator and the supervisor to ensure that the students will pass. But it's important that everyone understand this is a non-negotiable. Parents cannot ask for a redo. Students cannot ask for a redo. There are no redos and there are no late submissions. So the last thoughts I really want to leave you with are these, that the personal project is the culminating project, and it's the culmination of 5 years of the MYP. It's part of a larger assessment portfolio that we will have access to when we are authorized. Students will complete e-assessments in each of the subject group areas. They'll submit a portfolio of services action and their personal project for moderation. And that will ensure that they get an MYP certificate. That's a little down the road for us as we're still just a candidate school. But we'll begin with the personal project because it serves a very valuable it's a very valuable tool for our community. It will reinforce academic honesty, the idea that there are lots of different ways to learn and lots of different things that you can be passionate about. So I look forward to our first personal project fair and to seeing the creativity of our students in NOVA.